Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Mac and Chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am thrilled to have this particular guest with us. It's always surreal to me, and I've said this before, how many people, you see in your little black box growing up, and you never think that you're going to have any kind of a relationship with them later on. This lady is just as lovely as can be. She starred in one of the most memorable classic television shows ever made, Dark Shadows, where she played the roadside waitress of Maggie Evans and the doomed bride of Barnabas Collins, Josette Dupre. She's also a very accomplished author, and we're going to be talking with Kathryn Leigh Scott today. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. First of all, just want to say that our minds and hearts are with everyone in the Ukraine. These are really, really crazy times that we're living in. So we've got them here and here. And again, such crazy times. Also, I have to say, if you have not yet seen Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which is now streaming on HBO Max and Disney, you get your bum out there and see it on your couch. Actually, John and I have seen it in the movies 11 times. That's how much we love the film. You don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss this. It's proof positive that in the right hands, a remake can actually work and be done if it's in the right hands. So be sure and check out the new West Side Story. You will love it. I promise you that. Now, it's interesting. Yesterday we lost someone very dear to the entertainment industry who has a direct attachment to our guest today, and we are going to be talking a little bit about loss. I'm talking about Mitch Ryan, who is infamous for his role as Burke Devlin on the cult ABC soap opera Dark Shadows. And our guest today is Kathryn Leigh Scott, who starred alongside him in that wonderful show that we all love and remember so much. And let's bring Kathryn on now.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Peter.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome. Regarding Mitch, I just got off the phone 2-3 minutes ago with my friend Susan Sullivan, who has her own connection to Dark Shadows. She played a ghost, thanks to me,
Out of the job.
in one of the early episodes. but as you know, Susan and I are very, very old friends, and this is what I want to say about Mitch. The last year, we've spent quite a lot of time with him. I've been to his home. I read his wonderful book, and then of course Susan wrote a wonderful piece called "What Friends Do," and Mitch and David Selby and Susan and I, directed by Asad Khalil, did "What Friends Do," and I hope everybody has a link to it. You can see it on YouTube. But we spent several months rehearsing that, and I think we all got to know each other so much better. And the interesting thing is that we had all known each other at least 50 years. And we were all somehow worked together. David Selby, of course, and Mitch in Dark Shadows with me, and then Susan with David Selby and Falcon Crest, and with Mitch again and Dharma and Greg. So there was such a unity there. We've been a touchstone in each other's lives. And what Susan said, and I had to agree with her, is that I talked to Mitch, I don't know, 10 days ago maybe, and I had invited him over for lunch, and David Selby talked to him maybe a week ago, and David rang me after he spoke with Mitch and said, "Hey, we're getting together for lunch." And Susan spoke with Mitch just the day before he passed away, 2 days ago. And she said, it's amazing. He was fully engaged. And that's what David and I felt as well. He was fully engaged. He was making lunch plans with us. He was talking about, future projects. Right up until the end. He was dynamic and vital, and I don't know, that somehow it makes it easier. I'm going to miss him terribly. I can't believe I can't pick up the phone and hear his voice. We were really, really close. In fact, Peter, if you don't mind, I will tell you. It's because I thought about this, and Susie and I talked about it. It's 56 years ago next month that Mitch and I did a camera test for Dark Shadows, and both got the job. And it was quite amazing if you want to hear the story. But my agent, I had auditioned for Dark Shadows several times. So had Mitch. All of us were in and out of Dan Curtis's office. Nancy Barrett, Louis Edmonds, Alexandra Molka, but my agent rang, and he said Eleanor Kilgallen, who was head of casting for NBC, and for Universal, had invited me out to Hollywood for a screen test, and it was for one of those 7-year Universal studio contracts, and I went out and I did my screen test, and finished up on a Friday, and then spent time with a friend over the weekend, and I got a call from my agent, Dick Bauman. And he said, Dan Curtis wants to camera test you Monday morning early. You've got to take a red eye. I'm putting a script on your doorstep. And in those days, of course, you could just go to the airport and jump on a flight, walk across the tarmac, and off you went. And so I arrived back early in the morning. I got the script. I took a shower. I raced over to the studio, and I was sitting there in the makeup chair, having my hair done and studying my script. And in my little girl brain, I all of a sudden realized that there I was auditioning for Maggie Evans, and there was no other Maggie Evans auditioning, but there were two guys. And one of them was a guy named Henry Madden. Everybody called him Chick. And I knew him because I was a Playboy bunny in those days, and he was a room director, and he was also an actor. He was with Actor Studio, and his girlfriend was Shelley Winters, and because she used to come in the club all the time. And he was a funny guy. I used to catch him in the coat room. He was doing quick draws in front of the mirror. I think he wanted to be a Western star. Anyway, he was one of them. And then the other guy was Mitch Ryan. And I'd seen Mitch with James Earl Jones in Othello, so I knew who he was. And I auditioned with the two guys. It went so quickly. I mean, one take with each of them. And then the two of them knew each other from Actor Studio. So they were going to go to Joe Allen for breakfast. And they asked me to tag along. So there I am, sitting at the bar in Joe Allen's, that wonderful actor's watering hole in Broadway and off Broadway. And these two Actor Studio actors were not talking about acting, they were talking about baseball. And I'm sitting between them. We all ordered eggs over easy. They were drinking black coffee. I think they were both kind of hungover. And I have no idea what got into me, except that I was a Playboy bunny, and somebody at the club, one of my customers, had ordered this thing called a grasshopper. It was creme de menthe and cream, and it was all foamy. And who knows? It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Joe Allen's has just opened. We're sitting at the bar eating our eggs over easy. And I drank a grasshopper with my eggs. And I remember Mitch knocking me in the ribs and joking about drinking an alcoholic mouthwash. Anyway, and all I could think of, which one of these two terrific guys will I be working with? And then like an hour later, I was back home and I got a call from my agent, and I was going to play Maggie Evans, and Mitch Ryan got the job of playing Burke Devlin. And I've written about this. I called my parents back in Minnesota and I said, I've got a job, acting job. I'm in this soap called Dark Shadows. And my mother said, Dark Shadows, I've never heard of that. And I said, well, no, it's brand new, and we haven't even started working yet. And she said, well, you never know how these things go. You better not give up your bunny job yet. So there I was. Nobody knew I was working as a bunny, but I worked as a bunny for about 2 months while doing Dark Shadows. But, I was thinking about all of this last night because yeah, it's 56 years ago, and the very first person that I associate with Dark Shadows is Mitch. I mean, we camera tested together, so lots of memories. I have no regrets. We were close right up to the end, and I'm going to miss him. But what a life he led.
I just got his book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful. So thank you for letting me go on. But if one is going to pay tribute to Mitch, I want to do so as the really vital, wonderful, generous man that he was. We all know he was a wonderful actor.
Yeah. It's funny, we've been watching the first episodes all over again, that first, before Barnabas came into it, and there you are in your blonde wig, and there's Mitch, and you guys were so much a part of it, and it's interesting, well, with you, when you came onto the show, and you had the blonde wig, and we just got up to episode 20, and you're gone for about an episode and a half, and they say, well, Maggie left early today from the restaurant because she had a terrible headache. And then there you are in the next episode with your beautiful chestnut brown hair. Of course,
it was from that. Going to the hairdresser is better than an aspirin. No, you know how that happened, and it was really funny because of course I camera tested with my own long dark brown hair, and I remember Mitch making a lot of cracks about that. Nobody liked that wig. I certainly didn't, and but Dan was very seldom at the studio. His office was over on Madison Avenue, and he came in one day, and it was before I went into makeup and hairdressing for the show, and he said, that's your hair? And I said, well, yeah, And he said, "What are you wearing that stupid wig for?" Well, it was because of Dan that I was wearing the wig. Anyway, Leela Swift was very upset about it. She said, "You can't do that, Dan. I mean, the gal can't have short blonde hair one day and long dark hair the next day." And he said, "Why not?" That was the beginning of a whole lot of why nots.
Yes, and they always worked on Dark Shadows. Why not?
Yeah.
It always worked. One funny story that I just quickly came into mind about what a great sense of humor Mitch had was Dennis Patrick said they were filming one day, and of course you guys never stopped. And he had a scene with Joan Bennett, and you had just been attacked by Barnabas, and he's talking to Dr. Woodard, and he said something to the effect of, "Well, maybe you could find out what's happening to her when you examine her blood under the microphone."
Right.
And they cut the commercial, and Dennis Patrick said, "A microphone," and Mitch said, "Well, sure, you got to hear what the little bastards are saying."
I know. No, one can talk about this now, but because Mitch has talked about it, and I understand that and I wouldn't have done this, but I understand that in the obituaries that have been published in the trades, they all talk about the fact that he was fired from Dark Shadows. Look, the good news was that he was sober for something like 46 years, 47 years, something like that. But I was there that day, and we used to start rehearsal at 8 o'clock in the morning, and around 10:30, after we'd blocked everything and had a run through, the guys, of course, would, like Thayer David and Mitch, and, the guys would go off and have breakfast at some greasy spoon in the neighborhood. And because the gals were the ones that had all the ringlets and so on. Anyway, Mitch left one day, and he didn't come back. And I remember Bob Costello, our producer, he said, "Anybody seen Mitch?" And I said, "Well, he went out for breakfast." And he rolled his eyes. And anyway, he found Mitch in a barber shop. he'd got what we called a mohawk, and the side shaved, and he had his necktie tied around his head, and he said to Bob Costello, "How? I'm Catrice." Anyway, that's a true story. Anyway, he came back to the studio, and we tried to film and or tape, and the first scene was Mitch and Maggie in the diner, and he came in and he did. I'll never forget this. He took sort of a Shakespearean stance, and he said, "Maggie, where is your father?" And I heard this voice in the control booth. There was Leela saying, "That's it, wrap. We come back on Sunday to shoot. Everybody, that's it."
Wow.
That never happened. And so we shut down for the day. Nobody wanted to see him go. Everybody loved him, and I was really sorry about that. We came back on Sunday, and I think we had a new actor. God, I missed him, but you can't do that when you're doing a live daytime show. And he talked about it. None of us did, but he brought it up, many times. But if anybody wonders, that is the truth of that day. I was there.
I understand Dan Curtis cried because he really didn't want to let him go.
No, Dan adored him.
Yeah.
I mean, we all did. Leela loved him, and he was just such a wonderful actor, and he just had a great presence. And he was Burke Devlin,
Because Anthony George, God love him, but it's the great debate among Dark Shadows fans. Not to say anything bad about Anthony, but he wasn't Mitch. He didn't have that same swagger and that wonderful square jaw. There was just something. I mean, Mitch was brooding and sexy, and he just was the part. It just didn't work as well when they brought Anthony George to take over for him. So,
yeah, not to say anything against Anthony George, but yeah, it was just so sad. And but I think that had to happen for Mitch to turn himself around.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. You also posted beautifully this morning on Facebook about what's going on in the Ukraine and in regards to your brother. Would you want to share a little bit about that? Because we're all upset.
I will, yes. You know, we wake up every morning to this terrible news. And as much as one sympathizes with the Ukrainian people, you can't help but wonder, what can I do? What can I personally do? And I turned to my brother Orland Kringstad. Was the several years ago. He was the executive director of the Oslo Center for Peace and Humanity, working with Kjell Magne Bondevik, who is the former Prime Minister of Norway, and he headed up everything in the United States, and he mentored a young man who was Ukrainian, and stayed in touch with him. That young man and his fiancee, of course, are back in the Ukraine, and he's in direct touch. So one actually hears what is really, really happening. And so I asked my brother if I could post it, because this young man, who's certain to be one of the great leaders of Ukraine, he came up with a detailed list with links of places that one can reliably go to, that he's vetted, where one can contribute. I found a way today to send off some first aid kits. It's small. It's such a little bit to do, but it's something. And I can't watch those news clips anymore of people at the train station.
Heartbreaking.
One wants to do something. So I posted it this morning, and it's up to everybody individually, to the extent that they want to personally get involved. And I know we all feel tremendous support. This is our world, and we have a madman who's running amok.
It's so awful. Especially from going from the pandemic, which we seem to be slowly coming out of the woods, and now something like this.
I know.
You can't wrap your head around it.
I know.
Have we come a long way, or have we gone to? I don't know.
No. Anyway, yeah, I think everybody wants to do something. I'm also an alumna of the FBI Citizens Academy. It's one of the most interesting things I've ever done. But I was writing a series of novels, and I had an FBI agent. I wanted to get it right. So I went online, and I saw that there was a Citizens Academy. Well, for 3 months, I would go to these meetings, and they were in the evening, several hours, and these were with they were conducted by FBI agents. I learned about cyber warfare. I was on a shooting range. I held every sort of weapon you can imagine, and I was taught how to shoot it. It was just an incredibly intensive course. And when I graduated, of course, I became an alumna, and the FBI Alumni Association in New York, the Citizens Academy, they also have a way of contributing to the Ukrainian support. So I contributed to that today as well. There are ways. I mean, everybody will find a way through some association that they belong to. But I have to say that the FBI Citizens Academy was one of the best things that I could ever have done. And they only take, like 20-something people at a time. So it's worth going online, checking it out if you're at all interested. But it was really, I was the only actor writer in the group. Everybody, I mean, it was everybody from all walks of life, every sort of background and every sort of job. So it was really fun to meet these people that I would never ordinarily meet in any other way.
Well, we will also add the links to everything we've talked about, including the Ukraine links that you posted earlier this morning. We'll put all of those in what we posted on YouTube. We'll include everything.
It is something, isn't it, Peter? We all know that most of the people that are tuning in are going to be tuning in because they are Dark Shadows fans, and here we are talking about everything but Dark Shadows. But I loved it that you and John came to Lyndhurst. It was really wonderful. That was over the Halloween weekend, and that was really special. We're not having the Dark Shadows festivals anymore. It's well, because of the pandemic, for one thing. So it was really fun to see everybody. We were wearing masks and we were standing 6 feet apart, but we still got to get together. And I spent a day at Lyndhurst. I brought with me the dress that Michael Hanna designed for me. He made one for Laura and he made one for me. Mine is the replica of the ball gown that I wore in House of Dark Shadows, which was filmed at Lyndhurst. And they put it on a clothes dummy with a wig and everything, and it looked wonderful. And so I've donated it to Lyndhurst, and they are keeping it in the Blue Room on display if anybody wants to go there in Terrytown and visit that beautiful estate and see the dress. And I brought along one other dress that Joan Bennett had left me, that her daughter Diana gave me after Joan passed away. But it's a beautiful ball gown, and I brought that along as well for people to see. And I'm so glad that you and John could come and join in. It was really special.
It was a lot of fun, and I know there are fans watching, and everyone's saying, "Is there going to be another festival? Is there going to be another get together?" And yeah. I know Laura has said, she would love to. That everyone would love to if we can just get the world in check.
I know. And by the way, I was invited to go up to Seaview, which, up in Rhode Island. Well, that was another fun thing. Patrick, my boyfriend, and I drove up the next day, and we stayed in Josette's room and attended the costume party, and I brought a few things with me for display, and it was really fun. Again, there were 50 of us, but I got to talk to everybody, and it was just wonderful. And I loved Seaview. I mean, it's such a beautiful estate, and it's on the market, so this might be the last time that I get to see it. But what I'm really glad about, and Laura and I have talked about this, and David Selby and Jim Storm, how wonderful it is that we all got together for Halloween 2 years ago and did that Zoom meeting in lieu of having a festival. We all got together. And of course, there was Chris Pennock. And I think it was the last time that many of us saw him. So I'm so glad that we did that. And as I said, I'm really glad that I did the play with Susan. And I hope people watch that. But then to do A Christmas Carol. If you think about it, there were 12 of us involved in that, 10 actors from Dark Shadows, 5 of us who were on the very first episode of Dark Shadows, April 23rd, 1966. And we all met at rehearsal, and for the first time, it was Mitch and Nancy Barrett and David Hennessy and Alexandra Malka, and Alex and we exchanged emails yesterday because of Mitch, but we're all so close. And, Marie Wallace, Jimmy Storm, the fact that we could all get together and do A Christmas Carol, which is now available every year. We've lost Mitch, but he's still there, in A Christmas Carol, which we can watch annually. I mean, it makes you so appreciative, that we had that ability to get together to do that. Thank God for Zoom.
Yeah, yeah. Thank God for the internet. I mean, again, the wonderful thing about that was the fact that it was you and Mitch and Alexandra and David Hennessy, because we've all wanted to see you in the same room, so to
I
speak.
know. I know.
Because you
And by the
separate.
way, I have to say, we did that without rehearsal. Let's just be honest about that. We did it without rehearsal, and honestly, hats off to Todd Felderstein, to Ansel Farage, to Richard Halpern. Working, well, a little bit on camera, but behind the scenes, pulling that whole thing together. I'm just so glad that we did it. I thought it turned out pretty well, considering
It was wonderful.
rounding up 10 actors in 4 time zones, and we all studied on our own. We all prepared on our own. Who knew what costume anybody was going to wear? Who knew what our backdrop was going to be? And we just all got together and did it. And I kept saying to everybody, don't worry, there are going to be mistakes, but, we're the Dark Shadows company. Of course, there are going to be bloopers. It's not Dark Shadows without bloopers. And of course, there were plenty. But I think our audience is very forgiving, and I'm just so glad we did it.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty remarkable, and you can watch it on YouTube. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It was heartwarming and lovely. I mean, anybody can watch it, but if you're a Dark Shadows fan, it's an extra special treat to see everybody participating, especially Mitch and Alexandra.
Oh,
Everyone.
I went on Amazon and I found him a top hat. I sent it to him, and he wore the top hat. He loved it, and he called me up, and said, "I'm wearing it now." He said, "Can I get to keep it?" I said, "It's yours." I love thinking of Mitch playing around with that top hat. It was a magician's hat, the kind that pops open, and he just loved it. He just loved it, which was wonderful.
Because we're talking about Dark Shadows, and what's so wonderful about all of you and Lamar and David, and there are stars who are a part of something that gets this wonderful cult following, and they'll turn up their nose at it. They'll roll their eyes. Oh my God, that was so long ago. I don't want to. Don't ask me about it. I was watching an interview from the early '80s with Greer Garson, and she said after she had done Mrs. Miniver, for about the first year and a half, after about a year and a half, she'd be on the street and someone would say Mrs. Miniver, and she said I would kind of get a little miffed saying, I've done other stuff. And then she said, it dawned on me, you lunatic, there are actors that do years and years of wonderful work, but very rarely do they have the opportunity to latch on to something that is going to become immortal and give them a sense of immortality, and to have that special connection that people have with it. And I would feel that you and Lamar and that you have the same attitude towards it, because you embrace it. You don't run away from it.
No. I think we all long ago made our peace with it. I don't know all the reasons for it, but I think it's because we really were a family. And it was very much an ensemble. I think that had a lot to do with it. But also the fact that it went off the air at the height of popularity. The ratings actually went up those last few weeks before Dark Shadows went off the air. And I think because we all kind of dispersed, went our own ways, none of us, except for Jonathan a bit, were remembered just solely for that. That's not to say that for years afterward, I'm in the post office, somebody hears my voice, and it doesn't matter if I was on, Magnum the night before, or if I was in a feature film or whatever, currently, somebody would say, recognize me for Dark Shadows. And you just get used to that, and you just accept it. I don't think any of us struggled with that at all, and then we truly embraced it.
And you even, some of you especially, you get your own bobblehead out of the deal. Your own bobblehead
No,
and
I know.
the replica music box.
I've got one on my desk, and then she'll go like this and totally agree with me, and I just think that's wonderful. Now, can you imagine? I'm also, by the way, paper dolls. I mean, I guess once you're merch, you've really made it, right?
Absolutely, yes. I think Carrie Fisher said that once she became a Pez dispenser, she knew she had made it.
No, I
um,
sometimes give those away to people as gifts. I just think I think it's just fun. It's just fun. And the other thing is that people's association with shadows is so special. I can't tell you. I mean, 55 years later, people are still coming up to me and saying, you got me through a terrible childhood. My best memory is sitting next to my grandma on the sofa after school. And whether you're bullied or there are problems on the playground or, your grades are suffering or whatever is happening in your home life, the idea that we were offering a half hour of pure escapism. You were living in another dimension, one where there were vampires and werewolves and witches and you could escape to that. I love it. I love it that we could provide that for so many people who needed that. I mean, Dark Shadows was really about outsiders. And I've always thought, however you feel about yourself, and those growing up years are really tough. There was somebody on Dark Shadows that you could empathize with. Certainly, I got an awful lot of letters from youngsters whose parents had a drinking problem, or where they were latchkey kids. Maggie was certainly a latchkey kid, growing up without a mother, and certainly growing up on the wrong side of the tracks with an itinerant artist for a father who was always getting into trouble. So Maggie had to grow up fast, and I've always said, in high school, I happened to meet Carl Sandburg. I interviewed him for the high school newspaper, and I read so much of Carl Sandburg, boning up for my interview. And there was a poem, Marcia beat her hands against the bars of a small Indiana town and dreamed of what was down the railroad tracks. That to me was Maggie. She was dreaming about moving on. And, there's a lot of talk now about a new Dark Shadows.
yes.
I'm sure that you've been paying attention to what there's a writer named Mark B. Perry who's been giving a number of interviews lately, and he's created a new Dark Shadows. And I don't know what direction he's going in, but whatever it is certainly appeal to Dan Curtis's daughters, Kathy and Tracy, and I have a feeling it's going to happen. And I couldn't be more thrilled. I think there was so much that was good about Dark Shadows, and I think we're ready for that reboot, however it comes.
He's also very in tune with the fans. I watched a wonderful interview he did for Terror at Collingwood, which was hosted by Penny Dreadful. And I know for myself, I feel that so often when they do these reboots or even sequels, they kind of skirt over what appealed to people, and there's this idea in Hollywood, which it just doesn't make any sense to me. Well, we can't worry about the fans. We have to get a new group in. But if you get the hardcore fans, that's great word of mouth. And Mark is a hardcore fan of the original show. So when I heard him talk,
that's my understanding. That's my understanding. And, obviously, well, you know that I did Star Trek Next Generation.
Yes.
And I know what it was like working on that show, where you had hardcore fans of the original Star Trek, and they had the template, and they had the handbook, the Trekkie handbook, when you put on a costume, you had to stand in front of these producers who, knew what they wanted. They had that vision. They took Star Trek in a new direction, backward, forward, wherever they went with it. But they still stayed true to the core of Star Trek. I think that's what's going to happen with a new reboot of Dark Shadows. It's going to be different, but I think it's going to have the core values, the core, um, that core ambiance. What do we call it? I think we who are of Dark Shadows know it when we see it, and we didn't see it with the 2012 reboot of Dark Shadows movie. I wasn't there. We all knew it right away. I think this one is going to work. I think it could happen this year. It would be wonderful.
And we want you to be in it. We want all of you. We want all of you to be in it.
A little long in the tooth, but it would be fun.
Like Maggie could own the. She could own the inn now. She could be running the Collingport Inn. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Well, obviously, it would be such fun. It would be such fun. When I think that it was it was the very start of my career. I wouldn't mind wrapping it up in a nice big pink ribbon. It would be just great fun to do that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I wish them the best.
Yes, yes. Now, I have to say, I said this to you at Lyndhurst. Kathryn has written a myriad of books. I mean, started her own publishing company with Accompaniment Press. This was actually when I was 12, and I had just discovered Dark Shadows, or rediscovered it for the second time. I saw this on the shelf, and put down the 4 Oz books that I had in my hand, and this came home with me, my scrapbook memories of Dark Shadows. And this is pretty worn out, but it's an original. I'm proud of that. But
aren't I think I've only got a handful of those left. I mean, what is it? Oh my gosh. Now I think about it all these years later. What in the world made me think that I could not only write the book, but then publish it, get it into stores, I have no idea what made me think I could do it. And maybe that's why I was able to do it. But I've published about maybe 60 or 70 books now. Obviously, very few of them that I've written, most of them by other people. I love book publishing. But of course, the core of Pomegranate Press are the nonfiction entertainment books, and among those, Dark Shadows. But I've been blessed. I had wonderful authors like Ed Robertson and Mark DeWidziak and several others who wrote these wonderful companions. I think my scrapbook memories of Dark Shadows was, I think it was the first companion book as such. There was one other one I think that somebody did on Dallas, and I was so concerned that there would be copyright issues, and that's why I called it My Scrapbook Memories of Dark Shadows and made it a memoir. And then I was really, it was amazing. A year or two later, Shatner came out with a book, and he came up with the same sort of title. I wonder if he wasn't concerned as well.
sure.
But, I encourage David Selby, Chris Pinnock, Lara Parker, Marie Wallace. I encouraged everybody to write. And all of them, most of them contributed to The Dark Shadows Companion, which was the second book. And then they went off and started writing their own books. Do you realize how many books have been written by Dark Shadows actors? Pretty amazing.
Yeah. The one that means the most to me, and as much as I love Dark Shadows, in 2019, I lost my mom to stage 4 breast cancer. Yeah. And she had only just turned 71. And I purchased your book, Now With You, Now Without, about your journey with your husband, Geoff. Now, mom had cancer, and Geoff had progressive supranuclear palsy. But I've said to so many people, you don't have to be dealing with PSP, even though the book is a wonderful education into that insidious disease. This is about grief, about coping, about learning a lot of important life lessons. And I can't tell you, this arrived the second day of my mom's wake, Kathryn. And I started reading it that night and listening to you read it on Audible. And it was such a comfort to me. It helped me so much. You can't possibly know how grateful I am. And it's, see all of the dog ears on the book. It's so many wonderful
Well,
things.
that means a lot, Peter. Thank you for saying that. I'm so reachable. People find me very easily. It's certainly on my website. So it's really been wonderful getting letters from people who take the book as comfort. Among the many things that I discovered when I was a caregiver, toward the end, I don't think I ever really knew what hospice was until we had hospice for Geoff, and my feelings so changed about what that's all about. The quality of life that it brings for everybody is wonderful, and so many other things just about just the day-to-day challenges of dealing with a new normal when you're caring for somebody, in particular somebody like Geoff, who had a disease that had no cure, no treatment. So I'm glad I wrote it. I wrote it thanks to a doctor at the very beginning who said that he was going to try medications that were off-label in the hopes that something might work and ease the steady decline and progression of these symptoms. And so I had this daily record. It was a template for a book sitting right on my laptop. So when Geoff passed away, it must be 7-8 months later, I looked at it and I thought, I'm going to write that. I'm so glad I did. And I'm glad that it's meaningful to you and to so many others.
There's a wonderful life lesson in there that a very eccentric acting teacher taught you. You were up for a part, I believe, and quite an older part. And you said something to the effect of, why am I going to play a 60-year-old woman? And her response was, if not now, when? But it's an important life lesson.
It's become my mantra. If not now, when? I mean, there's so many things I've probably named several of them while we've been talking. Things that I've kind of jumped in to do. If not now, when? Even at this stage of life, there's so many new things. You just keep opening doors. There's always another opportunity, something more to do.
Yes. Another that a friend of yours, I believe a gentleman by the name of Alan, who said, you can't count on someday because it may never come. These are all things that we take for granted.
Yeah. And Alan, I met in grief group, and Alan just passed away about 3 months ago at the age of 95. And it's a wonderful story. After Pearl Harbor, he signed up, and he didn't finish high school, or he didn't get his diploma because he was deployed, and but he came back and went to college and so on. Had this anyway. He was 80 years old, and he decided he wanted his high school diploma. And so he went back to the high school in Los Angeles and went to the principal and said, that he wanted his diploma. He already had his college degree, and he had to sit in on 1 week of classes with all of these 18-year-olds. And one of them invited him to the high school prom. But it was wonderful. But I mean, there he was at 80 years old. It was just something he had to do. He had to have that high school diploma in hand. Wonderful man.
Yeah. I can't recommend this enough. We have given it to people who are going through similar situations, and if you are going through a rough time and you're in the process of losing someone or dealing with it, Now With You, Now Without: My Journey Through Life and Loss is great. Seriously, you want to read this, and then there's it's not just as there's a lot of sad moments, but there's also Geoff had a wonderful sense of humor. I mean, whether
Absolutely,
you have
he did.
a prognosis, he had that wonderful line. Oh gosh, was it? Well, at least I don't have Parkinson's.
Oh, I know, I know, I know. Yeah, he did have a wonderful sense of humor, and there's always something funny about everything, and it saw us through. It saw us through.
You have to laugh. Definitely, you have to laugh. So check this out, as well as all of the other. There's Murder in Prime Time, Downton Out in Beverly Hills. I'm getting ready to read September Girl. I haven't read that one
Oh,
yet.
September Girl. Yeah, oh, and by the way, September Girl was the last novel that I wrote. And it's something that I had wanted to write for many years, didn't know quite how to go about it. It takes place in two time periods, the 1960s and the sort of the year 2000, the millennium. But I'm so glad that I wrote that one too. It finally came together. Came out I guess 2 years ago. I started something long form, but what I'm writing now is mostly short form. I wrote a piece, the traveling camera case, that was published in the Daily Beast. I'm writing for the Ethel, which is a newsletter, an online newsletter, free to everybody, that's published by AARP, ostensibly for women over 40, 50, whatever, but anybody can read it. I am now writing my sixth piece for them. And I've got one coming out now in about 2 weeks. But I've written 6 pieces for them, and I've got another one that I've sent off. Anyway, writing these short pieces is really giving me pleasure. I'm really enjoying it. And I don't know about everybody else, but during COVID, you would think, with all the time in the world, you can't leave your home. You would use that time and be totally focused. Not a bit of it. I was less focused during COVID than I was before. And my boyfriend always jokes about this, but when I'm writing or whatever, I am totally focused. I'm the most. I don't hear things. I'm totally oblivious to the world around me. He has to tap me on the shoulder, or do that. I'm a very focused person. And during COVID, I was just, and I think a lot of people kind of lost their bearings. It was crazy. I think I'm kind of getting back into the groove now. But I found that writing long form was just not something I could do. Writing short form. I'm writing a piece now, really about Joan Bennett, and the editor at the Ethel, AARP, asked me to write it. So that's the next one that I'm going to work on. I'll probably start tomorrow, and that'll probably be coming out sometime early summer. They work very far in advance.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that about COVID, because I think we all just had too much time on our hands, and for some of us, you couldn't focus. It's so interesting that you say that, because I thought, oh, there was so much I could have done and I didn't do it, but I just think it all threw us for a loop.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was the uncertainty, feeling that you were in limbo, feeling that you didn't want to start, because I think I think that's really what it was. It just the uncertainty, and I think that you kind of felt like you'd lost your moorings.
Very much so. We also need to mention Kathryn is reading all of the original Dark Shadows paperback novels that were written by Marilyn Ross, and they are
I had
wonderful.
such a good time doing that. I loved it. Steve Smith at Oasis asked me if I would read them, and I just loved it. Each one took me about 7 or 8 hours, I think, and I found that I worked best at about maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. So I think there were 32 books, something like that. And I just go into the recording studio and put those ears on and just fall into this other world. In fact, the first year and a half of COVID, that's what I did. I recorded these books, and I just loved it because, again, I focus. So, going into a studio where I'm all by myself and I'm just reading, I just immersed myself. It was wonderful. I loved doing all of the voices, and the stories were so fanciful. A couple of them would have made wonderful plots on Dark Shadows, but they were, the Marilyn Ross books are very different from the show, just like the Big Finish audiobooks that we did, or the audio dramas, were sort of fanciful variations on Dark Shadows.
Yes, because apparently Dan Ross never really bothered to watch the show. He just had a basic little blueprint and then said, well, I'm going to go off and do my own thing here. So, but it's great with you reading them. It makes it even more special for the fans.
Yep.
Were there questions, John? Were there?
Yeah, actually, there are quite a number of questions.
Really? All right. Well, okay. I'm going to have a sip of water, and
okay.
I can't even imagine. What a lovely way to spend a Saturday afternoon. Cheers.
Yes, with my water.
So our first question comes from Kate Young. Kate with the C. Kate wants to know a little bit about the costumes for the show, particularly around 1792. Were they rented? Were they made?
Oh, they were all rented. I'm trying to think where, because I used to remember where they came from. I can't remember now. But anyway, Ramsey Mustaller was our costume designer, and she was the one that pulled all of our costumes, and they were wonderful. We had no say in them. Suddenly, you'd walk into your dressing room and there was a frock hanging on a hanger behind the door, and that was what you were going to wear that day. They were, I have no idea why when you see actors interviewed now about doing costume drama, I don't care what it is. They all complain about the corsets and this was too tight and could barely breathe in it and so on. I don't remember Marie or Alexandra or Laura, Nancy, none of us ever. We just put those costumes on and felt at home in them. I never felt that that kind of constriction and so on that everybody talks about. We just loved it, and when the guys had to put on their breeches and work with capes, and it was just fun. I mean, you're 19, 20, 21 years old, and everything that you've learned in drama school, you're putting to work. I mean, all of the Restoration comedy and Shakespeare and Ibsen and whatever else you've worked on in drama school, there you are on Dark Shadows going into those time periods. And we all just kind of fell into it. It was wonderful. Did I answer that question?
You most certainly did.
You sure did. Our next question comes from Lucy Cosmanic Subtle. She wants to know, what was your favorite character to play on the show?
Oh, I love playing Maggie. But then, Josette was such a departure. I don't, Lady Kitty Hampshire, Rachel Drummond, they were all so different. And they were all parts of me. They were all parts of the same core person in some way. I can't really make a choice. When I slipped into the costume and put on the hair pieces or whatever, that's who I was. And I can't make a choice. Do I have to? I hope not. It was just fun. I mean, Maggie, modern day girl. And no, I just, and then you put on the ringlets and I can't choose. I love them all.
Our next question comes from Jeanette Smith. She's not a fan particularly of rebooted TV shows or films because they never live up to her expectations. She says in the new one, she'll definitely watch it if the original cast members are in it. What are your opinions of the remakes that have been done to date?
Well, first of all, there was one that WB did. I can't remember how many years ago that was, but I screen tested for the Joan Bennett role. Dan Curtis was still alive then. I wonder if he even knew that I don't know. I guess he knew that I auditioned for it, but I did a camera test, and in fact, I actually have that camera test. Somebody connected with the production sent it to me. That was fun. Because I was very close to Joan. It was fun to camera test for the role, but I never saw it. I think there's a pilot out there, or 1 or 2 episodes. I never saw it, and the one that Dan directed with Ben Cross, I was out of the country. Remember, there were only 6 episodes. It was during the Persian Gulf War. I've never actually seen that. I really can't give you an answer. The only thing that I can comment on was the 2012 Tim Burton film. And nobody starts out to make everybody starts out with the best of intentions. I think it was their take on it. It wasn't ours. I remember sitting next to David Selby at the premiere, and Laura was on the other side of me, and we just sat bone still. It was just not what we expected. I didn't answer that question either.
You sure did, actually. Our next question comes from Bob Kahan. Miss Scott, what a pleasure to see you. The Joan Bennett piece sounds wonderful. Will it be on the AARP website? And what is your favorite Joan Bennett story?
Oh, I've got so many. Well, 2 of them. One from the show, actually, when we were still doing Dark Shadows, and we were filming House of Dark Shadows. And we had a very early call one morning. And Joan and I were in the limo, driven out to Lyndhurst. And it was cold. It was so cold. And we were bundled up. I think she was doing her crossword on the way out. Anyway, we got to Lyndhurst. It was still dark, and we went in and down the stairs because we did the makeup and hair downstairs. And we walked in, and there was nobody there except a plumber. And the drains, I guess, had frozen or backed up or whatever. So nobody could do anything. And Joan and I just sat in chairs, bundled up in our coats. In fact, there's a picture in one of my books of the 2 of us bundled up in our coats, waiting for the plumber to finish. And I remember at one point he looked over at Joan and no makeup, nothing. And he said, "Aren't you Joan Bennett?" And she said, "I used to be." And then the other story, because Joan and I were really close, she was living up in Scarsdale. Scarsdale, New York, and I would go and stay with her, overnight, and we both loved our white wine. And I remember 2 o'clock in the morning, we were both giggling, and she would tell me stories about Hollywood leading men, and I mean, just wonderful gossip. And then she said, "Would you like to see the screen test for Gone with the Wind?" And I said, "Yes." This is before they were kind of available. I think now you can kind of find them on YouTube or something. And but she had them, and we sat there 2 o'clock in the morning watching these. Paulette Goddard's, Katharine Hepburn's, and of course Joan's. Joan would have made a wonderful Scarlett O'Hara. She, the voice, and she looked not unlike Vivien Leigh. They had, physically they were sort of similar. I'm not sure I wouldn't have rather had Joan Bennett playing Scarlett O'Hara. I'm telling you, I thought she was wonderful.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Debbie BB. This question's been asked a few times from different people, but Debbie wants to know, have you ever personally had a supernatural experience?
No, but both my brother, we're both a little, as they say, fey. They're just a kind of premonitions. You don't want me to dream about you the night before. If you haven't been on my mind for a while. Well, I'll tell you one story. It's not supernatural. I don't know what you'd call it. It was my dad's 80th birthday, and he wanted a picnic. He wanted, ice cream and red checkered cloths in the garden, and all of his friends over, and hot dogs and so on. And so I bought these big containers of ice cream and cones and whatnot. And I have no idea what came over me. But the people started arriving, and my little table was set up, and I just could not bring that ice cream out of the freezer. I couldn't do it. And I hid from my mother virtually, because she came up to me and said, people are going to be leaving soon. They want their ice cream cones. And I just couldn't put it out. And, it never did get out. But then that night on the 10 o'clock news, there was a recall for all of that ice cream. It's just crazy stuff like that. There are many, many, many things like that. And I totally trust my instincts, totally trust them, because if I get a certain kind of feeling, I trust it. Yeah, my brother says he has the same sorts of things. You just
I'm the same way.
That's not paranormal. That's not. It's extrasensory.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Next question is from Brian Brown. Brian wants to know, who made you laugh the most on set? Brian guesses it's John Carlin, by the way.
Well, definitely John Carlin. I'll tell you. Jonathan could be pretty funny. Jonathan had a wonderful sense of humor. At least I found it so. We used to laugh a lot. Louis Edmonds could be very arch and funny. Joan had a great sense of humor. Thayer David. Yeah, those are the ones who could make you laugh.
Our next question is, you and Joel Crothers were so cute together on the show. Can you share a little bit about working with him? That's from Jeanette.
Oh yeah, well, he was like my big brother, and we dated for a while, and I just adored him. And I think one of the really funny stories. It was early on, and I had a boyfriend then, and actually he and Ben got along quite well, but. Ben was a photographer for Time Life, and he was on assignment in Africa, and he came into Rome, and he called and said, "Could you come over for the weekend? I miss you." I think I had something like 4 days off. And I told Joel that day that I was catching an Alitalia flight that night, and I didn't have to be back to work, I guess, until maybe Wednesday morning, and. Anyway, I finished up. I left the studio about 4 o'clock, and honest to God, around 7:30 that night, Joel Crothers was at my door, and he had a little suitcase with him, and a ticket. That's when you actually, went somewhere to buy your ticket on the same Alitalia flight. The two of us flew over to Rome together. And it was really funny because the stewardesses recognized us. We called them stewardesses then. And one of them came up to us and said, "Are Joe and Maggie running off together?" Anyway, Ben picked us up the next morning in his MGB GT, which seated two, so there was Joel sitting on the back, and Ben got him a room in the same hotel. We were staying at the Angleterre, and he got him a room in the same hotel. And then Ben, of course, was on assignment. So Joel and I palled around during the day, and we went to the Vatican. And I was wearing this little blue corduroy suit that I made. I made all my clothes in those days, and it was a little mini skirt with a long jacket. And I think a little shirt underneath. Anyway, we got to the Vatican, and they stopped me. My skirt was too short, and I couldn't get in. And Joel said, "Well, can't you just unzip it and hang it on your hips?" Well, I did. So there I was with about 4 inches of bare belly showing. And the two of us got in there, and it was, but it was sort of covered by the long jacket. But I mean, it was 4 inches of bare belly, and we toured the basilica. It was wonderful. I got we did laugh. It was funny. It was okay to show bare belly, but not my knees.
Our next question is from Josette Balcom. First of all, she wants to let you know that her name is actually because of your character. Her mother named her Josette because of you playing Josette on the show. What is your favorite mishap or most memorable mishap of the many? By the way, this has been asked by so many different people on the show. Blooper, error. What was your favorite or most memorable?
Oh, there were so many. I remember there was something I've written about so many of them in my scrapbook Memories of Dark Shadows because they were fresh in my mind when I was writing them. But I remember I think a doorknob came off in my hand, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we were ad-libbing so much of the time. And one of the worst things, and actors always have, when you have to remember consecutive names, a bunch of them or whatever. And I remember getting so tongue-tied one day, and I didn't really use the teleprompter, and if you're not used to using the teleprompter, you can really get caught up in it. And I remember glancing over at the teleprompter and not being able to make any sense out of where I was, and I don't know. I didn't even know what episode that's in, but. I just said all the wrong words. It was like gibberish, and it's so embarrassing. And we wanted desperately to redo those shows, and of course we couldn't. Everything was essentially live on Kinescope. It was funny. I watched the Lucy Desi documentary that Amy Poehler directed, and it is marvelous because they talk about the fact that everything was on Kinescope. So, the show was done in California. Those kinescopes were actually mailed And when they got to New York, I mean, everything was a generation, because it was filmed off a monitor. Essentially, that's what kinescope is. So it wasn't as good a quality as what the original was. And it was Desi that said, "Why don't we film live in front of an audience? But we'll film it." And so, you couldn't edit those kinescopes. I mean, it was costly, it was tedious. So, I mean, yeah, in every episode there are bloopers, but I loved it that was in that documentary last night, that it really explained why kinescopes, where everything just looked soft focus, fuzzy.
Yeah, very primitive.
Yeah.
We watched it last night too. We loved it. We thought they did a wonderful job.
It's a good film.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, check out Lucy and Desi. Amy Poehler, I think Ron Howard produced it. It's wonderful.
The only thing that I'm disappointed in is that one of my great friends was Bob Schiller, Schiller Weisskopf, and they created Maude. They wrote for I Love Lucy, and I don't know why Jess Oppenheimer's son. I have no idea why they couldn't mention Schiller Weisskopf. Why they were left out of it. Bob died just short of his, I think, 100th birthday some years ago, but he was such a great friend, and his wife and I were bunnies together. A wonderful man, and so funny. So that was a disappointment. I mean, why leave somebody out who, when they were so integral to the success of the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and
go ahead.
I want to mention one other thing, a bit of a shock yesterday. A journalist that I've known for 35 years, and she was a huge Dark Shadows fan. She wrote so many things about Dark Shadows, Diane Clahane, and she passed away unexpectedly. That was a real shock yesterday. Her funeral was yesterday. But, she, a wonderful writer, and many of the people tuning in today, I think, would know who she is. She wrote a lot about Princess Diana, but she wrote a lot about Dark Shadows, and she was just a great friend.
Oh, God bless her. I'm so sorry.
So we'll make this our last question.
Oh, good. I'm running out of water.
This is from Maureen Braunstein, who is a senior in the director program at UCLA. Her question is about the woman who really doesn't get credit for being ahead of her time, Leela Swift. What was it like to work with her?
Well, Leela had a very no-nonsense, business-like exterior, but she was just soft and warm and lovely. She had several sons and a husband. She was that was her family life, and she was really strong, tough, and so talented. She came out of live television. She worked her way up. And what I must say I truly admire about Dan Curtis is that he hired Leela as his primary director. She was the one who directed the pilot. And I think that we all benefited from the fact that, for the first 2 weeks, we had a precious 2 weeks where we all we did was rehearse the first 5 episodes, so that when we went in front of the cameras, we were all comfortable with each other. We had that time to develop our characters. Remember, this is a company of, at that time, maybe there were 10 of us, 9 of us, and none of us knew each other. We were it was a brand new show, so we had the benefit of Leela working with us. She was the one that kind of beat Maggie Evans into shape. And I remember in the very beginning, among her many notes, she said, "You're a waitress. Your job is to clean that counter. Just clean the counter." And I knew exactly what she was telling me, that, forget the words, forget that you're acting. And remember, this was my very first job. She said, "Just clean the counter." And something clicked in my brain, and I was a different person after that as an actor. It was such a simple little instruction, but it went to the very heart of what acting is all about. And I think we all benefited. Even somebody like Joan Bennett, who is, she was then, 56 years old, I think. With that long career, I think her first... I think the mailman arrived. The Airedales are telling us the mailman arrived. But she... Joan's first job was when she was 16 years old. Patrick is wrangling them.
Aww.
Feed them something. Anyway.
Part of it after Maggie.
But she was 16 when she did her first job, and she was, that's many years working as an actress. And I think she even benefited from working with Leela, because it was the first time that she was doing live television like that. She'd done theater, but live television like that, which has its own sets of nervous-making things. She wasn't used to doing that many pages in one day. And she was wonderful. Each and every one of us benefited from working with Leela.
Yeah, I think she was instrumental in the show's success. Kathryn, I want to thank you so much for taking
you're welcome.
with us.
Yeah, it's been a nice afternoon.
It's been so lovely. Now, where can fans, people watching, find you, your website, Facebook page?
Darling Patrick McRae has put together a really wonderful website for me. It's KathrynLeighScott.com, and it's got a lot of biographical information, and it's got information about all of the books. There's a marketplace where if you want to get one of the books or the photographs and so on, they're available there. There's also a lot of information about Ben Martin, because I'm handling his archive. And by the way, this March 20th, 2023, I'm mounting an exhibit of Ben's Marcel Marceau photographs, and that'll be at the National Arts Club in Gramercy Park, and I'm so excited about that. But there's information about all kinds of things on my website, so and also a way to contact me.
Wonderful. So you can visit KathrynLeighScott.com. Check out all the books. Definitely check out Now With You, Now Without. Again, great book. And also, little shameless plug here, because I know some of you from fandom know John and my work. We are going to be changing our venues, our theatrical venues. We're actually moving into a new venue, so stay tuned for that. In just about a week's time, we'll be announcing where we're going to be performing next. And if you're in the Rochester area, just a month from yesterday, I'll be bringing my Judy Garland tribute to the OFC Theater in Rochester, New York on April 2nd. In honor of Judy's centennial. This would have been her 100th birthday. So we're going all out, and I hope you'll come. Laura has seen the show. Marie Wallace has seen the show, and a lot of the Dark Shadows alumni has been to see Judy at some point.
Great.
Yeah, so come and check us out in Rochester. But we'll be announcing our new theatrical location here in Manhattan in the next week. And again, Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't leave, Kathryn. Don't leave.